sat at his desk, rubbing his temples as the glow from his laptop illuminated the dark office. It was well past midnight, but he had barely noticed. The world outside was quiet, but his mind was alive with numbers, projections, strategies. This was his life. At 52, he was still at the top of his game. His consulting business had grown beyond what he had imagined. The clients were bigger, the deals more complex, the stakes higher. The thrill of problem solving, of closing negotiations, of proving his worth in the industry, it was intoxicating. And yet, something had started nagging at him in the back of his mind, a feeling he couldn't quite name. He glanced at the framed photo on his desk, one of him and Linda on their honeymoon, young and carefree, laughing in the sunlight. That was decades ago. These days he and Linda lived in the same house, shared the same meals, slept in the same bed, but they felt miles apart. Downstairs, Linda sat on the couch, flipping through a travel magazine. She had circled a few destinations: Italy, the Grand Canyon, the Caribbean, not just for the places, but for the idea of them. The idea of waking up with no agenda, no deadlines. The idea of holding Mark's hand while wandering through new streets, rediscovering each other outside of their old roles. But she knew better than to bring it up again. She had tried before. "Mark, what if we took some time off? Just us, maybe a few months to travel?" His answer had always been the same. "Linda, I can't step away right now. There's too much going on." There was always too much going on. So she had stopped asking. But in her heart, she was beginning to accept something painful. Mark might never stop, and if she kept waiting for him to be ready, she might never get the life she wanted. One evening, over dinner, the tension finally boiled over. Linda was talking about a friend, Marjorie, whose husband had retired early and now they were traveling across the country in an RV. "It just sounds wonderful," she said wistfully. "Waking up every morning with no plans except to explore." Mark barely looked up from his phone. "Sounds nice," he muttered, scrolling through an email. Linda put her fork down, her patience thinning. "Mark, do you even hear yourself?" He looked up, startled. "What?" "You don't even listen when I talk about this anymore. Every time I mention slowing down, you shut me out." Mark sighed, setting his phone down. "Linda, it's not that I don't listen. It's just, I'm not ready. Work is a part of me. I can't just walk away." Her voice softened, but the pain was clear. "And what about me, Mark? What about us? If you're not ready now, when will you be?" He had no answer, because deep down, he wasn't sure there would ever be a time when he'd feel ready. As weeks passed, they settled into an unspoken routine of distance. Linda began filling her days without him. She joined a writing group. She took yoga classes. She planned small weekend trips, alone. Mark noticed. He noticed how she smiled more with her friends than she did with him, how she stopped waiting for him to finish his emails before starting dinner, how she seemed to be carving out a new life, one that didn't center around him. One night, as she packed for a weekend retreat with her friends, Mark leaned against the door frame, watching. "I didn't even know you were going away," he said. She glanced at him, her voice gentle but firm. "I didn't think you'd notice." His stomach twisted. A week later, Mark met an old college friend, Richard, for lunch. Richard had retired early the previous year, something Mark had secretly thought was a mistake. "So," Mark said as they sipped coffee, "how's the whole retirement thing treating you?" Richard chuckled. It took some getting used to. At first, I felt lost. No emails, no urgent calls. I thought I'd go crazy. Mark smirked. Sounds awful. But then, Richard continued, I started noticing things. Mornings with my wife, walks without rushing somewhere, long dinners with old friends. For the first time in decades, I actually felt present. Mark scoffed. That's great, but some of us aren't wired to sit around and take walks all day. Richard studied him. Mark, do you even hear yourself? Mark blinked, caught off guard by the familiarity of those words. Richard leaned in. I get it. Work makes you feel alive. But one day, you'll wake up, and it'll be too late. The company will move on without you. But Linda, she might move on too. That hit like a punch to the gut. That night, Mark found Linda in the kitchen, flipping through another travel magazine. He sat across from her, his voice hesitant. Where do you want to go first? She looked up, surprised. What? The places you've been talking about if we were to take a trip. Where would we go? She studied him carefully, trying to gauge if he was serious. You'd actually take time off. Mark exhaled. I'd start learning how to. Her eyes softened, but there was still a flicker of doubt. She had heard similar words before. Mark, I need more than just a vacation, she admitted. I need to know that you're ready for this next phase of our life together. Not in 10 years. Now. He swallowed hard. I don't know if I can just stop working. She nodded. Then I need to know you're willing to try. Change didn't come overnight. Mark didn't walk into his office and quit the next day. But he started small. He set boundaries. No more work calls at dinner. No checking emails in bed. He planned their first real vacation together in over a decade. At first he felt restless. The urge to check his phone was almost unbearable. But then something strange happened. He started noticing things. The way Linda's eyes lit up when she talked about a book she was reading. The way the wind felt on his face during a walk at sunset. The taste of coffee when he wasn't gulping it between meetings. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Linda rested her head on his shoulder. This, she whispered, is what I've been waiting for. And for the first time in years, Mark understood. It wasn't about quitting work. It was about choosing life. Choosing her. Before it was too late. This story isn't just about work or retirement. It's about the delicate transition between ambition and fulfillment. Between running and finally arriving. Many couples face this crossroad, where one still chases their career, while the other longs for a slower, deeper life. Some navigate it. Others don't. But at the end of the day, success isn't about the number of deals closed. It's about the moments you choose to be present for, and the people you choose to share them with.